Okay, we're going to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for December 6th, 2023 at 6:04 p.m. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item, I would look for a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
This is Bethany, so moved.
This is Barb, second.
Call for the vote.
Rob and I.
Bethany, aye.
Barb, aye.
Lynn, aye. Next, I look for a motion to approve the November 15th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
This is Rob and I move to approve those minutes.
This is Bethany, I'll second.
I'll call for the vote.
Rob and I.
Bethany, aye.
Barb, aye.
And Lynn, aye. Item number 5 is a public hearing and discussion. Would the applicants please come forward and have a seat at the table? Give your name, address, and make sure you speak into the microphone so those online can hear you as well.
I'm John Waldoch, 6755 Pine Street in Columbus.
And did you receive a copy of the staff report developed by Associate Planner Eleanor Hahn dated November 29th, 2023 regarding this application? This report contains certain findings for the preliminary plat findings of fact 1 through 12, the preliminary plat recommendations 1 through 7, final plat findings of fact 1 through 5, and final plat recommendations 1 through 8.
Yes.
Do you have any concerns or comments on the recommendations?
Looks good.
Okay. Eleanor, do you want to read the public hearing notice?
Absolutely. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the City of Columbus Planning Commission on Wednesday, December 6, 2023 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard. The hearing will be conducted in person and by interactive technology at the Columbus City Hall, located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Minnesota, to consider a request for a preliminary and final plat, Waldoch Second Edition, reconfiguring 2 existing lots. Members of the public interested in attending in person, monitoring the meetings, or wanting more information should contact the city offices at 651-464-3120 or visit the city website at columbusmn.us. The hearing shall continue until all evidence and testimony has been received.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing. And John, did you have anything you would like us to know about?
No, we're just looking to take the large piece of property that we had and split it to be more desirable to try to sell them again. And we needed to combine a couple lots to get road frontage to make 2 lots out of that. So the 4-acre piece got combined with a little larger piece to split that into 2. And then with that, to vacate the drainage easement because this 3-acre or 5-acre lot was part of Street Smart and then part of one of our other lots. And now that it's bigger, it's going to need its own drainage. So we needed to vacate that drainage to that lot.
Okay. Eleanor, would you like to give your report?
Yeah, of course. So this plat is a pretty simple reconfiguring of 2 existing lots, kind of a lot line adjustment, and the drainage and utility easements through the center of where the existing lot line is needs to be vacated, and then new drainage and utilities easements are put in along those new lot lines. They have pretty standard drainage and utility easements. They had the first Waldoch addition that was, sorry, I got a little lost, approved in 2021, had a pretty hefty watershed permit with Rice Creek. So the only concern would be if this lot line adjustment and those drainage and utility lines moving might have impacted that at all. After contacting Rice Creek Watershed District, they assured me that no, this adjustment isn't going to change that existing permit or any of the watershed and drainage concerns that they had on those existing, on that existing subdivision and that existing permit.
Madam Chair and Planning Commission members, what you have before you is the preliminary and final plat. We have combined those applications for you. And again, this is just simply replatting, and that's why it's called a second edition. So you have a first plat where there were 7 lots, and now when you replat, it's called a second edition, and it's only those lots that you are reconfiguring that's in a plat. So it's a very streamlined process because you're only looking at this a lot line adjustment, and so we don't have the applicants go through a new delineation or new permit process when we're still looking at the same lots and we're just simply moving a line. In this particular case, a vacation of petition for drainage and utility easements, that public hearing goes before the council. So at the last meeting, the city council called for that hearing on December 13th, and that will happen next Wednesday. And so we kind of looked at these applications and tried to marry them up with dates in this particular case. So tonight you are holding the public hearing simply for the preliminary and final plat, and the council will hold the public hearing for the drainage and utility easements at the next meeting on Wednesday the 13th.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that I can clarify for you guys?
Any discussion?
Seems,
If there's no discussion, I will call for a motion.
this is Barb. I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the application for a preliminary plat for the Waldoch.
Madam Chair, can
Pardon
I
me?
just interrupt? Can we open the public hearing first?
Close it or
Oh,
open?
sorry.
Or
We'll
ask,
close the public hearing.
Open it.
Oh, I did. Oh, sorry. Is there anybody out in the audience that wants to speak? Okay, sorry. If you want to come up to the table,
Thank you.
there we go. Please state your name and address and speak into the microphone.
My name is Roger Nace, and we live at 6636 141st Street, from 141st Avenue Northeast. And yeah, so I think there's only one thing that I have a concern with, and that was, this was on October 6, 2021. We were, it was a COVID time, it was a different room, but we were all together going through this to look at the entire 40 acres or 30 acres or whatever was left to be subdivided. So that was the subdivision, the original subdivision meeting. And so at that meeting, I presented this slide or these words. And so when I'm just going to go through it quickly, it won't take me very long. But when we purchased our 20 acres, the 80 acres directly south of our property was residential. We share a 990-foot property line with this property, and it has since been rezoned commercial. And we are requesting a buffer be provided between the commercial, industrial, and residential property, similar to that was provided along Zodiac. That was 300 feet. We asked for 50 feet. So currently, there is a row of mature trees between our property and the Waldoch property. The property line is about in the middle of the trees. We would like to see the trees not disturbed and a 50-foot minimum buffer to a residential property line be provided. This is what we requested in the meeting on October 6, 2021. And the Waldochs agreed to that request and at the meeting. And then consistent to how that was applied as far as a buffer goes to the residential property to the west, they put in 2 residential lots at that time. And those lots were 300 feet by some length. So effectively, it was a 300 feet of separation between the new CI and what used to be residential, the new CI and the residential property. So, so consistent with how that was applied to the residential property to the west, the commercial industrial drainage and utility easement should lie on the commercial industrial side of the land use buffer. And I was seeing that in what I had looked at on the map was shown with the commercial industrial, or on the residential, right at my property line is where the drainage, utility, and the fence and so forth would go. And without that utility and drainage and fence being on the other side of the buffer, there really would be no buffer. There'd be a big CI-style fence and a utility easement right on the residential property line. The trees that we agreed to keep would have to be at least partially cut down in order to put the fence and drainage utility easement in. So that would not be consistent with what we agreed to. And it would be much easier to maintain the fence and utility easement if it were on the CI side of the buffer instead of down the middle of a row of trees. So that is my request here. I'm okay with the change, except that I'd like to see the easement be put on the other side of the buffer. So that's where the fence would go, and the drainage or whatever goes there would go there. I don't know what it would be at this point, so, but it could be a fence.
So, Mr. Nays, just to clarify, what you're asking is for a 50-foot buffer from your property line southerly, and then an additional 20 feet, and that's where you want the drainage and utility buffer to start, so it's a total of 70 feet?
No, I was saying that the 50 feet is 50 feet. I'm just saying that the easement to that 50 feet would be on the other side. I mean, they can still use all of that easement for whatever they want to do with it. It's their property. All of it's their property. But the buffer would, in this case, they wouldn't have to cut down the trees right on the property line, which was the idea to begin with. So the 50-foot buffer is unchanged. I'm just saying that you don't get a 50-foot buffer if they have the fence right on your property line that you look at. So the buffer, the fence would go on the other side of the 50 feet, is all I'm saying, I guess.
Okay, so in this case, there's a 50-foot buffer. The drainage and utility easement could be co-located, meaning over the 50-foot, and then you want the fence at the 50-foot line versus the property line. Did I get that right?
Well, the purpose of the buffer was to provide a buffer and to keep the existing trees. So if that means that they have to cut down the existing trees, then the utility buffer easement, whatever they do for the utility, would go on the commercial industrial side of the fence. You wouldn't want to put the utility easement on the other side of the fence, or the utilities, you want to have them on the CI side so you can maintain them. So I think that would make more sense.
So can you show, point on the map
Yeah.
where you're wanting this?
So right here, there's a 50-foot says it somewhere here, conservation easement. And it goes from the property line to here, and that's the easement. And then what I'm saying is I'd like to have this where it says 16 here. It defines 16 as drainage and utility easement. You put on this side of the buffer, so you get a buffer instead of having the fence and everything being right up to the property.
Okay, so just for the planning commission, the 16 and a half foot setback is for the wetland. That's a buffer, and that's required by our wetland ordinance. The 10 feet is the drainage and utility easement, which is the smaller dotted line from the property line to out. And so that's where I was trying to understand where you were, because right now they're co-located.
Yeah.
So you want the fence on the 50-foot line.
Right.
Okay, so that would be a difference in a condition in order to provide screening from the commercial property to the residential property.
So it's residential on the other side there.
Mr. Nace, maybe you could show the planning commission where your property is. I don't know, but they know where they.
Yeah,
think they
I
know
see
where
it.
is.
His property is right here.
Okay.
The 990-foot property line.
I mean, I don't know as far as like the people who drew this up, if there's, I don't know what's there and if that would be, like, is it possible and easily done to switch it, or is there something in the way? Or, I mean, I just don't know about how it, what goes into like, I guess, deciding what goes where. Is there?
So established already in the first edition of the plat was a 50-foot conservation easement where no development could happen. And co-located is a drainage utility easement of 10 feet from the property line. So those were established. What Mr. Nace is asking for is, we require screening between a residential district and a commercial district, and he's asking if the screening can start at the 50-foot line, which is the conservation easement line, versus the property line. He knows that there's a buffer, but it won't work very well if the fence is beyond the buffer.
Right.
So he's
Yeah.
asking if the fence could go on the 50-foot line for screening purposes between, if they're going to have storage or a building or outside storage, whatever they're going to put, or maybe there's nothing, we don't know that because we don't have a development, but he's asking that if there is going to be screening of a fence, and correct me if I'm wrong, to be putting it on the property line of the 50-foot easement.
So
Correct.
right now, there's nothing there. So that, to me, that would be whoever buys that piece of property, that we would have them do that.
Wouldn't that be handled at the time the property is sold?
Yeah, when
rather
they
than
want
now?
to, when they want to apply for their building permits and design review and all of that. Because they're the ones that are hopefully going to put up a fence, not right now where there's nobody there.
Right.
Dean, I know this is a legal question, but I'm not sure whether you perhaps know. Can you put, the conservation easement is already established. Can there be a condition on the plat that no encroachment can be made into the conservation easement of screening materials?
I'll answer this in a non-legal fashion. I was involved in the plat review 2 years ago, and I want to make clear to the Planning Commission and to everyone in the meeting, the conservation easement was not legislated by the city. We have no authority to impose or require that. And so this was a gesture by the Waldochs in favor of Mr. Nays to establish this 50 feet easement. Our ordinance requires the 10 feet to be on the property line. We're not going to move those are ordinance matters. I'm reluctant to say we can do anything that is outside of our regular ordinance performance criteria. In other words, Whether screening should be on the property line or 50 feet from the property line, it's not our jurisdiction. This was a complementary agreement. It didn't have to be done. It would not have been a plat requirement by the city to establish the easement. That was between two parties. And I can understand Mr. Nay's position, but I'm recommending that this remains a private matter. Somebody buys Lot 1, they have to adhere to our ordinance requirements. They also have to adhere to the private conservation easement that is of record now. We don't really have the ability without a project to even evaluate if screening is better in the middle of this new lot or whether it would be better. It's all based on topography and everything else. In some instances, screening in a certain location that we might prescribe doesn't work because you'd have to have a 20-foot fence, whereas in another location it might be 7 feet. So I'm reluctant to do anything because this was a gift, if you will, from one party to another and didn't involve the city, that we complicate it by trying to make additional requirements as a part of this plat procedure. That's a planning response. I'm not the city attorney.
Well, my thought process is just that when somebody does purchase this piece, that's when you would come and get the parties to work together, whatever. Right now, I don't see how we can impose that.
It's just
This
a
is,
lot.
this is pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. It's just a
So
lot line where nothing is changing otherwise.
my advice to you would be when it gets sold and something is going to happen, that's when you come asking.
Well, let me ask this question. Are we now establishing the drainage easement at this time, or will the drainage easement and location be established when somebody buys it?
I believe.
We have a letter from the city engineer that says this. It doesn't modify site drainage or impact public infrastructure.
So I'll answer that again best I can. There are two forms of easements. They might be called the same thing in some instances, drainage and utility easements. They're placed on property lines, and they don't have anything to do with drainage per se when they're on a property line. It's if, in a more traditional sense, you run private utilities, gas, electric, telephone, whatever, cable, you are creating corridors along common properties where those would occur. The other form of easement are required by state law to cover the wetlands, and they are located on the edge of delineated wetlands, which have not changed since the original plat was done. We also require, Elizabeth mentioned this earlier, a 1-rod buffer beyond the delineated edge of the wetland. You won't find an exact 16.5 feet anywhere here. They do them by straight lines, and so in some instances that buffer might be 40 feet. In some instances it could be the minimum 16.5. But that is our ordinance requirement. Nothing in this procedure that we're contemplating tonight, which is changing property lines, is altering any easement with exception of the original lot line between the old lot 1 and 2, which has to be eliminated. And that's what the city council is holding the vacation hearing for, to eliminate that. Nothing else is affected in this. We have no development proposal. And at this point, I'm reluctant to say your authority goes anywhere beyond these 2 new lots in Waldoch Second Edition are consistent with all of our ordinance requirements, and that's really your recommendation.
That's the way I see it.
I agree totally.
Okay. Thank you for coming. And like I said, if somebody buys it and wants to develop, that's when you come back to us.
So when the lots were developed, or when they changed the zoning to CI prior, the there wasn't a requirement at that time either, but they came up with a ruling that it would be in the best interest of the property owners, the residential owners, and Dean calls it a gift, but the gift might have been changing that property from residential to CI.
But that,
And I'm not, that's happened before. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to change, but their land value as CI was quadrupled, whatever it is. But, so in order to compensate for us in a small way, a very small way, just to put the fence on the other side is something that we would really appreciate. And I think that it's not asking that much to do, and it wouldn't hurt the property value. And it, like I said, when they deemed it required or necessary to put the 300-foot buffer to the properties on the west, there was nothing that required that. The city council came up with that as, that was in the best interest. So, you know, this isn't really any different than that. It was a determination that, yes, we've got two very different land uses here, and we're going to try to make it at least a little bit more comfortable for those folks that have seen that encroach upon their property. So I don't think we're asking for a lot here. And I think it's better to do it now than to try to do it later, because later on, I know later is always harder.
Here's the problem with doing it now is when a business buys a lot, we look at the design, what it's made, the material it's made of, and we're going to want that fence to match the business. So if we put up a fence now and they come in and it doesn't match, we're stuck. I don't think, I get it. Everybody wants to do what they want to do with their property, and nobody wants to that. Right now, I don't see how we can require that, but when a business buys this property, that's when you can come forward and we can require a fence, but then we have control over what material is used.
Well, I understand that I'm not requesting a fence at all, if that's to make that clear. I'm just saying that if a fence were put up, and a CI-style fence, which isn't like your neighborhood fence, if that fence were put up, it would put up on the other side of the easement. And so I don't know, I would like that to be considered. I just think that was the original agreement that we had, and it was an agreement so that I would not, I guess personally, object to them dividing this, which was one property at the time, into, what, 7 lots? So I agreed to them dividing it up into 7 lots. They can sell it for more, I don't care, but I got a 50-foot buffer. And I'm saying that I'm not getting a 50-foot buffer, and that I would have objected to that had we not agreed to that 50-foot buffer.
however, this is not in our purview. This is, we have no say in that at this point. The only thing that we are required to do is to okay the split of the lot. We don't care what's going to be on either lot at this point, not at all. When somebody buys that lot, that is when we care about what's going to happen to it, what's going to happen to your property due to that sale. At that point is the point that we can then do something. At this point, this is just simply a lot split, nothing more than that. Nothing more is going to happen on the property, so you don't have to worry about that at this point, is what we're trying to say. We really can't do anything at this point. It's just a lot split and nothing more.
And our role here is not to approve it. Our role here is to make the recommendation to the council to either approve or deny. So we really can't, there's limited of what we do.
You're worried about the future, but right now, you know, it's just a lot. There's no development plan there. They're just repositioning the lot lines.
And these easements are are there, and the, it wasn't very long ago that there was somebody in Park Construction was moving in there, right? And their plan at that time was to put the fence right on our lot line. And so instead of creating that problem and worry, and so now they're actually changing these properties again. And so if they're changing these lots, I think there's an opportunity to include that in the change. So that was, anyhow, that was just
Okay.
my request. I appreciate you guys listening,
Okay,
so.
thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the Planning Commission online? Okay. Now we're going to close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
I think we've touched on everything.
Okay.
We're good.
I'll look for a motion.
Okay, we'll try this. Motion to recommend approval of the application for a preliminary plat for the Waldoch second edition to reconfigure lots 4 and 5 into 2 lots. Lot number 1, block 1, approximately 18.544 acres, and lot 2, block 1, will be approximately 15.882 acres, based on findings of fact 1 through 12 and recommendations 1 through 7, and the memo from City Engineer Kevin Bittner dated November 29th, 2023, and the recommendation for the final plat application for reconfiguration of lots 4 and 5 into the lots mentioned, based on findings of fact 1 through 5 and recommendations 1 through 8.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
This is Robin, I'll second.
Okay, I will call for the vote.
Robin, aye.
Bethany, I.
Barb, aye.
And Lynn, aye. So that will be recommended to the council for their meeting next week on December 13th at 6 p.m. And feel, I would show up. We tell people you don't have to, but it's always good to be there in case they have questions. Next is the Planning Commissioner's report.
No, open forum.
Oh, open forum, sorry. I forget we did that with public hearing. Any open forum? Okay, Planning Commissioner's report.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
And Bear Homes tour is tomorrow. And I know Judy is out of town, and she was one that said she wanted to go. I will not be able to go.
Okay.
Bethany?
What time is it tomorrow? How did I miss this?
I called you and then I think I forgot to leave you a message. So now we're talking about it now.
Got it, great, love it.
I got caught up in doing something else.
No, that's fine.
Bear Homes, if you're still interested in doing a tour, the Forest Lake Area
Chamber
of Commerce is doing a tour tomorrow at 3:20 p.m.
Okay.
If you are able to attend, we just need to let the Nanette from that chamber know who to look for, and we can only limit it to 2 planning commissioners. So if you would like to attend, let me know so I can let Nanette go.
Okay, great. How long is it supposed to go?
She said, I think it's 15 to 20 to 30 minutes. It just depends on how long it takes to go through. But the ambassadors to the Forest Lake Chamber are also going through, so it was an opportunity to meet them and go as a group.
Yeah. It works for me. The timing does, so.
Lovely.
Robin, were
I
you?
have so many appointments tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm not interested.
Okay.
Wonderful. I know Judy was mentioning that she might be back in town to attend. So I'll call her again tomorrow morning, ask if she's still thinking of coming.
No,
Okay.
no.
But
It
if
would
not,
just be you.
I'll represent.
you can represent. Absolutely.
There you go. City administrators.
I have no report tonight, thank you.
Okay, planning and zoning.
I think I have everybody's vouchers for end of year from you guys, except Judy, who I'll be emailing tomorrow. So that was what I was going to talk about, but you all came up to me before the meeting, so good for you guys.
Perfect. Anything else? Okay, I will look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
This is Barb, so moved.
This is Robin, I'll second.
Okay, now I will call for the vote.
Robin, aye.
Bethany, aye.
Barb, aye.
Lynn, aye. So meeting adjourned.